call to order the joint meeting of the City Council and the Planning and Zoning Commission. I want to thank the Planning and Zoning Commission for coming out tonight. And I am turning this over to the city manager, or?
Well, let me introduce Debbie Fell with KCI Technologies, who is on the phone with us remotely. And we're going to turn it over to her and let her go through her presentation tonight. Good evening, Debbie.
Hello, good evening, everyone. I'm sorry I'm missing you in person, but this is the next best thing. So looking forward to presenting your draft plan tonight. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, ma'am.
We can hear you fine.
Okay. Can we go to slide 2, please, Trish? So as everybody's familiar, we've said this before, that this comprehensive plan shall have the force of law, and no development shall be permitted except as consistent with the plan. So the verbiage is very important with the plan, but they actually really, as everybody is aware, takes consideration into the suggested land use maps and the zoning maps. So we're going to cover that in just a little bit. But I do want everybody to know this is the force of law once it's adopted, but it can be amended and things change with development trends as time permits. Next slide, please. So the next section is the chapter of the title of the code of the state where we have to abide by certain checklists. And we have to have the plan available for the public, and we have to also send it for intergovernmental coordination. So what our job is there's a document that's about 15 pages long about all the requirements that have to be put into a plan, positions, goals, policy, census data, and we collect and make sure that checklist is met, and we submit it to the state, which then has 19 agencies review the document for compliance. Next slide, please. So where we're at with the comprehensive plan history is there was a 2003 plan, and there was amendments done in 2005 and 2006. And the amendments that were done by the city for all of those listed here were actually ones that were completed by applicants or development trends or any kind of subdivisions or, like I said, a change of use or change of land. So there was 2 amendments completed, which the document will actually go into detail. And in 2008, the plan was updated as well. And then in 14 and 16, there was 2 more amendments made, and that was land use as well. So those 4 that I just mentioned as amendments were just mapping as far as suggested land uses and eventually zoning. And in 2018, there was a pre-update review where the city went to the state and said, what should we put in our plan this year? What is different? What should we look for from a state's aspect? And then in 2018, there was 2 amendments, and there was actually one just recently done within, I believe, a month ago. And right now we're on the 2021, which is the new plan. And when I say new plan, I mean that we took into consideration all of those plans, updated the amendments, and revised the plan. So you're going to see the formatting has changed to match the state requirements, and it is quite a bit lengthier with a lot more data and a lot more history than you've ever seen. But I think you'll enjoy some of the highlights I'm going to share with you today because it's a great decision tool. It's a great tool for decision making in land use. Next slide, please. So we are on the downhill curve for the project scope. As you're aware, we collected all the data, created the document, did a pretty intense community outreach, survey, and kickoff meetings, which I'll go into. We updated the plan, drafted the document, and the staff briefly got to review it with input in a short turnaround time. And now we're presenting it to the public, the commission, the council, neighboring communities, and the state for comments. So the window is open, will be open tomorrow, which I'll go into more details as well. Next slide, please. So what I'd like to do is just share just a couple key milestones. We completed a SWOT analysis, which is the commission and the council is very familiar with internally with the staff, which we went over the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats in everybody's personal opinion and professional opinion for the conference or for the city to include. We also reviewed the goals that were previously set into the document and received input on some new goals in advance of drafting the comments. 2 surveys were completed in April and August of 2019. We held 3 outreach events between April and August of 2019, which we'll go into a little bit. And we've held multiple public meetings. So everything that we've had on this document has been a joint meeting or has been held publicly. And the city has all of the presentations placed on the website upon completion of the presentation. So we've kept the public in the loop along the process all along the way. Next slide, please. One of the first key milestones we did for outreach was, everybody's familiar with the city election. We've had a couple since then. We've had quite a lengthy interim with COVID being a top priority for everybody. So the city election is where we actually launched everything. It was great to talk to people that aren't familiar with a comprehensive plan or what's detailed in it, or why people should care, or why they should get involved. So we launched that on the city election April 2019 and started our survey process. Next slide, please. And in your hottest months in Delaware, July and August, there was two events held. One was the Riverfest, and the other one was the AFRAM Festival. This was really good, and you'll see in the document as well that we had outreach, as you'll see on these posters, where people could just fill out what they'd like to see less of in the city, what they'd like to see more of. And the city council and staff worked the second event for the AFRAM Festival. And it was great interaction with people just for them to be comfortable in saying what they do like and what they don't, on top of promoting the survey. Surveys sometimes get lengthy and people check out when they get to a certain question or are not understanding it. So this is a simplified version, and this is put into the plan in detail, all the responses verbatim. So you'll know if there's anything that sounds a little direct or less indirect. Those are verbatim comments typed into the plan, which you'll see. And the best part about these more and less comments are they are actually cut and pasted in each applicable chapter. So instead of reading at the very beginning where you read all the public comments in a chart, we actually applied them at the bottom of every chapter, so we can say, you said what you wanted or you said what you didn't want as the community, and we listened and we heard and we saw how we could address the situation. Next slide, please. So some of the plan highlights I'd like to go over with you is the update of the census data. We have 2010 census data, which we know is outdated, but we also use the American Communities Survey, which is from some collective census data up until 2019. So you're going to see in this document, we go in, we describe what was pulled, where the source was pulled from, and the year, so everybody would know its validity. Some of the highlights just for the census data, which I presented to you previously when we went over the survey, but your population in 2000 was 6,699. In 2019, it's showing as 7,715. So within that 9-year period, you have 1,016 new people in the population. And the housing units in 2000 was 2,760. Well, in 2019, you were at 303,043, so you have almost 600 new homes in that 9-year period. And a lot's happened between 2019 and 2021. So those were two that stick out pretty good. You're growing, and you're growing in housing, you're growing in population, your age is getting diversified. All of that census data is collected into that document to go through demographics, profiling of income, and a lot of diversity. So you'll see where you sit within the community and the comments that are noted throughout the plan. As we just discussed, we had community input and involvement very early on in the plan, so we could collect the data and make it work within the plan. Another section that was added that I think gets skimmed over quite a bit is the city and community services. It's very easy for everybody to say what is not being done or what could be done better. But I feel that what is being done gets overlooked quite a bit. And when you have an increase in population, an increase in housing, it also can potentially lead to an increase in crime. You have more people, more businesses, more transportation, more traffic, more visitors coming to the community. So it also increases your water sewer demand and your services for the city staff and your billing, et cetera. So we need to know where we're at with the city staff and give everybody a little bit of education on what they do. We also added your community services. Your organizations, I think, are vital to the community. One thing we heard throughout the surveys were everybody loves being a community. They love being part of something. That's why they moved there. That's why they live there. That's why they stayed there. However, the important part of including your organizations is the fact that they have goals and they have initiatives of their own. And sometimes they have to work independently. What we're trying to do here is to say, if the community organizations have goals and the city have the same kind of common goals, let's increase our private-public partnership and go after dual roles in meeting the goals and objectives collectively, which I think Seaford does a good job of. There's a lot of communities I think we could look at in different organizations as well. And common goals for partnerships, which once again, your cities of Seaford's very good at, but there's always room for improvement with the diversity part of things. Another one is increased environmental protection chapter. I'm not going to get into a lot of this information. You've probably heard the acronyms MS4, your stormwater system, TMDLs. It's covered into that chapter, and that's coming. And Seaford has done a very good proactive initiatives in being in the forefront of that with the Sussex Coalition and the Sussex Conservation District. So this will help educate people on why and what is going on a little bit more, and also let everybody know that it's driven by EPA. Another highlight that we have is suggested land use analysis. So your previous maps, all of your maps before, were completed with shading in certain areas, but you could have one piece of property be in one shade and one piece of property be in another shade. This round, the state is requiring they are parcel based. This will help in your decision making. It can also hinder things at times depending on where the lines were before. We took your old map and overlaid it on the current parcel data and filled it in that had the majority of the land use coverage. So we did not change land use categories. We worked with the city on any kind of issues that we had and how we could resolve them. So we do not have any land use changes for anybody coming up that have been mentioned, but this helps you a lot because now it's parcel based. To keep the parcel based, we had to actually complement the zoning classifications. So we created the land use based on the zoning classifications. So we are not intending on rezoning any properties. You may have some come up within the 18-month period of people that want to change their property that maybe have not been heard until the document gets released. We'll take those on a case-by-case basis. But right now, we're not looking at changing anybody's land use or anybody's zoning classification, which makes it a simpler plan to go through. And by that, I also want to let you know we can do amendments. Let's say you have a piece of property that we have in an area that is residential or agriculture, and something comes in and it's an employment center, and it's a large, maybe commercial or light industrial, and it meets the needs of what the city wants, it meets the needs of the community. You can go in with a land use amendment change prior to the zoning, which you're familiar and comfortable with, and that can be an amendment to this current code. Next slide, please. The other thing that's new in this is, once again, city initiatives. So not being the engineer or planner for the city of Seaford, I'm not engaging with them for multiple years other than on a professional level. At every event, I kept hearing of people want things to do. They complain about vacant structures. They want jobs. I can tell you that what was lacking was the educational component, or the fact that the people might just not know, because the Seaford does a good job promoting itself. But the city is not just maintaining. It's not status quo in the city at all. There has been several initiatives completed, and I only went back to 2008 with the staff. We didn't go prior to that. But there's several initiatives completed in all categories and all chapters of this plan. And we pulled some of those out that are pretty large ones. It's not all inclusive, but we pulled some large ones out. So the public understands that there has been a lot to keep Seaford on the forefront, a lot of infrastructure in place, or things that take 5 and 10 years to come to fruition. The seed was planted before, and now they're just coming alive. So it takes a lot to get some of these larger initiatives through. And we wanted to highlight some of those in this plan. And I think the public it'll help the public and the community and decision makers understand what it takes to go through that process. Also, many new initiatives are underway right now that we highlighted in here. Your Oyster, the Oyster Park, Amazon, the Western Business Campus. We put several of those in there so the public is aware. When we heard over and over and over again, we need more jobs, we need things to do. This plan just shows an array of different versatility in the job market that's existing, but's coming on deck, that's underway now because of your planning and foresight. So we highlighted a lot of that as well in the city initiatives. We reviewed the development trends. We went through the building permits. So you're going to see things that you may have never seen before. How many building permits were issued over the last 10 years? Well, you get building reports every month. You get manager reports every month. But sometimes seeing it over a decade or two, you kind of see how things are going and if they're headed in the direction which yourself and the community would want. We were required to expand the goals and action items as the state requirements. And we had additional maps. So we have a total of 13 maps in here. There's quite a few maps. They're parcel-based that show a lot about environmental, which we've talked about, and you'll see a lot in that chapter. We also have the zoning and the land use, which are the two you're going to use the most. We had to create city key positions. There's 10 of them by chapter base. We kept them as neutral as possible, knowing that we need certification from the state. So it doesn't get as specific to say, this is where we want this is where we do not want this. It leaves it a little bit open, but it talks in general terms, and it matches your goals that you've already provided us in the document. One of the last highlights I want to go over before I get into some zoning and land use stuff is the annual implementation strategy. So every year, every comp plan I've ever designed or developed or gotten passed through, I am constantly told all the stuff that we have to do after this is adopted, all the implementation and action items, they need to have a timeline on them, and they need to be prioritized. Well, that is like nailing a jello to the wall, in my personal opinion, in operations. It all takes time and money. And every year, this should be analyzed through the budget process. So what we've recommended in this document is that the Planning Commission chair and the city manager and the mayor and the city council go over what should be done the next coming year. What should you look at in the plan? Is there funding available? Can you get a grant? Do you have to get a loan? And it also helps you understand that the staff might not have the time to do all these projects at one time, not if you want them to be successful. So all of these things will be unfunded, and I definitely make sure the state knows that, and some are mandates. So we like to say these are all important implementation and action items, and we will be accountable in our annual report to the state to say what is being done. However, we can't tell you what's going to be done in the next year, 2 or 3, because we have to balance our budget and consider all of the projects and everything we have going on with priorities. So we think that's the best approach, and I've done that with all the comp plans I've done this last 2 years, because if not, you're going to keep turning your document into the state and saying, we didn't meet it, we didn't meet it, we didn't meet it. And I think you need to talk more about what you do complete rather than what you do not complete, because there's a lot going on in Seaford that sometimes doesn't get mentioned. Next slide, please. So this is the analysis that you have never seen that I think is very worthy in your comprehensive plan. It helps you address your citizens and the community. So there's roughly 2,911 acres inside the city boundary limits. And I say roughly because some of these are counting roadways, some are not. It depends on the GIS mapping data that gets collected. So some count some roadways, some do not. They do not count the DelDOT centerline files, but they do count some of the local subdivisions. So roughly 2,900 acres. Out of that, there's about almost 1,600, maybe 1,500 residential acres, mostly in medium, and then matching somewhat between the low and high is next. You have 847 acres of commercial property, mostly in the highway, commercial area. And then 479 acres collectively industrial, mostly in the light category. So there's quite a good blend of uses. There's quite a good blend of the zoning that you have throughout the community. And I think this is worth, every time there's a zoning change, I think this table is worth updating. Because even though it's zoned that way, I want to be very clear in saying it doesn't mean that's what's on the property. as far as what they're using it for, and it could be vacant. This is just acres of zoning, not necessarily what is on the acres. So that's just that by right, people have to develop what you have. And another tool you can do after this is adopted is you can take it to what is vacant and what has structures on it. A lot of municipalities take the tax assessment rolls and overlay those, and then they post it on their website to say, here's all the vacant properties. We'd like to see these redeveloped or developed, so they're not vacant anymore. So I think it's an interesting composition, and just looking at it from an outsider's perspective, but the principle of planning is you have a good diversity of the right mix of uses within the community for the structure the way it's set up. Next slide, please. So that's inside the city limits. The next slide is now going to talk about your annexation growth area. We did not change these boundaries. We did not expand them. I can definitely guarantee you the state will probably not let you expand them, because remember, we roughly have 2,900 acres in town. And right now we're saying we want the first right of refusal on 9,000 acres. Now that's a lot. That's a lot of acres. But when you're talking about sewer and water and you're talking about expansion, you want to be able to control what's going on around your boundary as much as possible with good growth and good planning practices. And remember, you can only annex if the property is contiguous to a street or a town limit. So some of these are way far out, as we've shown in the plan. So basically, there's 9,000 acres suggested land use. Right around 7,800 of those are agriculture and residential combined. And then 453 acres are potential mixed use. They're larger tracts of land. And 366 are commercial and industrial. So with the golf course taking 110. Once again, these are rough. They include roads because we do not have all the individual information in the database. This is pulled from the counties. So you have a lot of area to grow. We did not change this. I do know the Department of Ag is now making comments on expansion of boundaries near farming areas. So we are not looking at expanding this anymore at this time, depending on what we get from public comments and the commission and the council. Next slide, please. So on intergovernmental review, we have our comment coordination. We've submitted to Office of State Planning. Once again, this is a draft. So we have plenty of time to be able to get everybody's comments and incorporate those or consider those. So Office of State Planning Coordination, we will be having our meeting in June and then getting comments back roughly mid-July. And those will be in writing, and you'll see the full document. We'll post that on the city's website as well, as far as what the state had to say. We will have certification issues potentially. We will have recommendations and requirements. And we will look at each one of those based on our history and give you some recommendations for consideration, and then ask for your input in moving forward with our thoughts. We also will be sending this tomorrow to Sussex County Planning and the Sussex County Engineering Departments for comments. The town of Blades, we're required to do the neighboring municipalities. So we have the town of Blades and the town of Bridgeville as one of your service MOUs. And then, of course, the Salisbury-Wacomico Metropolitan Planning Organization, which Seaford is a member of, and the city engineer. So one of the disconnects we have as your planner and your city engineer is we want the city engineer to take a look a little bit more at the utility section and looking at the population projections and where we're at with the sewer and water. One thing to make very clear on this review is when you provide your sewer and water, you're not building it out for the years 2050. If so, all of the rates and all of your expenses would be would tap everybody out as being too high. So what you do is you build it, you build it as needed. So we're going to have the city engineer work on our population projections and then where you're at with what's remaining as allocation. They do that on all your projects anyways. We think it's great to include in the comp plan. So we'll be looking forward to those comments as well. Next slide, please. So now let's talk about the public. This is the part we've heard the public that took the time to do the community and the business survey and that came to our events. So we're asking now for a public comment period. We're looking for advanced written comments for request. That would begin tomorrow, and we're looking to have that end August 10th. The official public hearing is August 10th. So we'd like the written comments in advance. Reason we ask this is because when they send us the email of the comments, we catalog those in a spreadsheet. So the council, the commission, and the community will see all comments exactly the way they're worded, our recommendation on what the comment should be, and we have a meeting to go over all of those collectively after the city staff has provided recommendations. So that document gets cataloged and logged in so all comments count again, just like they did in your initial outreach. So the public comment process now includes written submittals. We have a designated form that I'm going to show you in a minute. And once again, we're asking for advanced comments. This actually helps us do some homework before you actually get to the public hearing stage. And I think it's very helpful to see what the initial comments were, and we can keep working on the document, the next draft. Next slide, please. So the city will have the document on its website in a PDF version. And talking to the staff, I think it was a great recommendation that they're put up by chapters. So we have each chapter up there. If somebody is only interested in housing or just interested in historical cultural affairs or transportation, they can pull up that chapter. This is a very large document. I think we're at 400 pages the last time I checked. But I believe 60 of those are surveys. So it's a very large document, and the maps are all 1 through 13 are one PDF. So they're very easy to open, very easy to get. And if you'd like the printed version, just contact City Hall. I'm sure they'll have one there or other locations as they determine necessary for people to be able to view, borrow, or look at. Next slide, please. So this is new. Normally you can be in a meeting room and people can ask several questions, which we'll have that right at the public hearing. But the written comment process has really helped us, and a lot of people like to be anonymous, and they actually like to submit comments or redline a document. So the acceptable comment options are, it can be done in Microsoft Word is the worksheet that we give. We've produced a PDF document of that worksheet. They can be handwritten. We've learned that some people still prefer to handwrite. That just needs to be printed, or complete, scan and send, or it can be dropped off at City Hall. Once again, we prefer the electronic method, but we know that doesn't work for everybody because then I can cut and paste the comments in, which work out very well for our spreadsheet. Next slide, please. So the written comment form will look like what you have on your screen. Somebody would provide the page number, the chapter number, and the paragraph, and what they would like, what their recommendation is, the change, and or a source. Sometimes somebody will have a document maybe that is more updated than what we have. Maybe it's a local document. Maybe it's an organizational document. And if they give us the link, we can update the plan. That's what this process is for. We welcome any and all comments of any kind that are constructive, like that can contribute to the document or make this a better document for the community. It's going to be a long, long tool to be able to use. So your spreadsheet with all the comments will be somewhat similar to this form, except for there'll be another comment that will say what our recommendation is on that comment. And some of those recommendations may be, thank you for the comment. It might be irrelevant to the comp plan. We get a lot of comments that are irrelevant. Replace the stop sign at North Street. Thank you for the comment. We'll pass it to the department, but it's not relevant for the comp plan. So we will go ahead and sort those through, but you will see them all collectively when we get all the comments back from the state and the community. Next slide, please. So we've also have used, which we're the third party, so we're recommending that we collect all of the comments. We've learned in the past that some people do not want people to know where the information comes from. I do have to be very clear that under Freedom of Information Act on this project, we would send everything to the city in the format that we get and forward all comments. But as far as the deliverable for the public presentation and for the document, none of our comments will have names on those. Every comment counts. We don't really care who we get it from. We want to consider it. So all the comments will be emailed to our projectoutreach@kci.com. It'll be monitored, and we will respond to all of the comments. We'll respond by saying thank you we're in receipt of your comment, and they will be released and presented at this meeting date. So everybody will be acknowledged. When we talk about the advanced written comments due, legally they have until August 10th to be able to, for the public comment period. we're asking if they can give them to us in advance by July 29th. It's just very helpful for us to be able to do that work and prepare for that public hearing so we can let you know what we've received so far. It also helps during the public hearing for people saying the same thing over and over and over again. We can use that comment and address it and then as well. And then we have to have it adopted by the end of September. So between that August timeframe and submitting it to the state, we have to have that adopted by the end of September. I can tell you that we've put together the majority of the information is what is going to I'm going to call the meat and potatoes of the document that meet the state requirements. Anything that's going to change large substance, suggested land use, zoning, a large substance part of the document will require a resubmittal to the state and potentially a re-review. So once again, we're going to take all the comments and see if there's any substantial changes. We'll need to know those right away. If we don't have any substantial changes, meaning changing the intent, changing the direction, changing the key positions overall, then we just submit it to the state and they look at it for 20 working days and give us our letter back to say, you have no certification issues and you can go ahead and adopt contingent upon the governor's certification. So we have we have a 51-day comment period for the community, which is, I think, a nice long time for people to be able to review it, read it, and get the comments back. A chapter at a time, collectively, however they choose to do so in their free time. And once again, we would really like any and all comments from everybody, and all of them will be considered just as they were for the public outreach that was very important to the council and the staff. Next slide, please. And with that, I am ready to open it up or turn it back over to the mayor to see if there's any questions.
All right, thanks, Debbie. Are there any questions from City Council? Councilman King?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a question around the communication. Seaford being a very diverse community, how is this message going to be sent other than English? So I guess my question is this written in any other language other than English?
No, the English is a standard language. I would say if there's any organizations that want to assist in translation, we could probably post a list of those on the website. But since the English is the version the state requires, and that's the version that we scoped out, I do think it's a great recommendation, but I do think what we could do is post the website and have some translation organizations maybe that can assist those that might need it if that would be okay.
Any other questions from council? Any questions from the Planning and Zoning Commission or anybody here in the public? Councilman Santos.
Yeah, I just wanted to figure out if you guys could explain to me a little bit how this works. Let's say people write comments. Are we going to be reading them all out, or like how? This is my first time.
That's okay. Debbie, you want to try to answer that question?
Could you repeat that question? I just heard the beginning and the end.
Yeah. So let's say we get all these comments. Once we get all these comments received, then what happens?
So once we get all the comments, we will then present those at that public hearing meeting. That will be the first item on the agenda for us to go over all of those. If there's items that need further discussion, it could warrant another meeting, which is fine because we can leave the public comment period open, or we can close it and make decisions on the other items. So there's one round of public input unless it's determined necessary to hold additional meetings. That's never predictable. I can tell you I've done 5 comprehensive plans and I've never had to have 2 rounds of public hearing based on the data that we have in the document.
Thank you.
It could happen, but if it does, we'd have to have another meeting. So the comments come in, they'll be presented to you, at the public hearing meeting. The public hearing will be held, and then the changes that you elect to make at that meeting, we incorporate into the document and submit it to the state.
Thank you.
That answers your question. Okay. Any other questions from council? Planning and zoning? Okay. So with that, we will need a motion to have this set up for the public hearing at our first meeting in August, which will be August 10th.
Yes, sir.
And then we'll also do the we'll have the public hearing and the, is that what we'll approve the plan based on that or move it, or?
It depends on the public comment that we get and council's decision at
Okay.
that time, but that could be a time when we move forward.
Okay. All right, so we need a motion for the public hearing for August 10th.
May I ask a question? One
Yes, sir.
question.
Yes, sir?
And the draft document will be available for the public tomorrow?
Yes.
It will go live tomorrow on the website?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
Okay, Councilman Santos?
Yeah, to what Councilman King said, do you think the city can provide translation to Haitian Creole?
Translate the whole document into Spanish or Haitian Creole might be very difficult. But what I can offer, there are translation services that we
Right.
can link people to. In addition, should we need it, we do have Spanish-speaking employees here at City Hall, and we have 2 Haitian Creole-speaking employees at the police department that are adept at communicating with those people should they need that, and then help them direct them towards other resources. Does that seem acceptable?
Yeah, but could we also maybe, is there any way that we can reach out to the community in those different languages and at least let them know that we're, that this is what's happening? You know?
If I can interject on that one, Charles, if you want.
Go ahead.
All the organizations that we have listed, we send a direct that we got information from, that you'll see in the document in the chapter. Those will all get an email sent from us, and it'll CC Charles to say, we've released the plan, here's the link. We will wait till the city goes live tomorrow and then send that out. I can also tell you that the communication relations for the city is phenomenal at Facebook, social media, press release, newspaper. So they will use the same checklist that we did when we announced all the surveys, which was widely received. So I think using those documents and anything that, once again, we did rely on council, planning commission, and the community to let people know. And I know, there's some council people that have done a phenomenal job when we had the surveys. So please take it to the Downtown Development District, all those organizations. We will be sending invitations to look at the website and provide the contact information. And you'll get a report on who we have sent this to. You just won't have a report on who responded.
Okay. So we'll push it out.
You build it, they will come is our goal.
All right, Councilman King?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess just to kind of piggyback a little bit off of what Councilman Santos had said, I also agree. I think it's a good idea if we reach out to community leaders, people that can voice this message. If it's not the entire document, have a discussion and give them the opportunity to fill out recommendations and suggestions, and then maybe bring that back to council, if that kind of makes sense. I think of quite a few people, community leaders within our community that can have that conversation and help drive this message to our entire community. So, Debbie, I don't know what that looks like, but I think that might be an option as well, other than just organizations. I think community leaders as well.
Yeah, so what we can do is one thing we can do that would help is we'll draft an email that goes to these organizations that are listed in the plan that we've put information in. We'll draft it, and what I can do is send that to Tricia and Charles, and they can forward it to the council people, and you can use that as a mechanism to send it to your contacts. I think it would be great to just send out the same message. We can have a nice press release on that, but you have to have the same message that you could just take as an email and forward it to maybe somebody that's in a leadership position in religion, somebody's in a leadership position in organizations, or somebody wants to translate it for us into, English as a second language. So I think that would be a good message that could be sent to everybody. We still want collective written comments, to be able to catalog that in so everybody's accounted for that wants to respond. But we can definitely set you up with a chain email to send out to as many people in each of your Rolodexes, or anybody we can reach out to. It would not hurt at all.
Yeah, awesome.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, if there's no other questions, then I'll accept a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion to accept the schedule provided by Debbie File, Senior Project Manager, to allow for a public hearing on August 10th.
Okay, so we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Councilman McCoy, I'll second.
Okay, thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, it's unanimous, Debbie. So we will put this on at 7:05 for August 10th. We appreciate your work on this, and we'll be looking forward to this moving to completion.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Thank
See you,
you.
Debbie.
Thank you.
Have a great night.
All right.
You too.
Okay. So and with that, I'll accept the motion to adjourn the joint meeting of Council on Planning and Zoning.
Councilman McCoy, so moved.
Second, please.
Councilman King, I'll second
Thank
that.
you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? It's unanimous.